A chance encounter. The bustling streets of New Geneva hummed with the usual cacophony of human and alien voices. Dr. Ilara Chen, a brilliant xenobiologist, weaved through the crowd, her mind preoccupied with her latest research. She barely noticed the gathering storm clouds above, a rare occurrence in the climate-controlled city. A sudden flash of light and a deafening crack shattered the afternoon calm. Ilara's head snapped up, her eyes widening as she saw a streak of fire tear across the sky. The object, clearly some kind of ship, left a trail of smoke as it plummeted towards the outskirts of the city. Without hesitation, Ilara sprinted towards the crash site. Her heart raced, not just from the exertion, but from the thrill of the unknown. As she approached, she saw the ship had carved a deep furrow in the earth. It was unlike any design she'd ever seen, sleek, almost organic in its curves, with a surface that seemed to shimmer and shift colors. Ilara cautiously approached the craft, her scientific curiosity overriding any sense of danger. A hatch on the side of the ship suddenly hissed open, startling her. She peered inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim interior. That's when she saw her. Curled up in what appeared to be the pilot's seat was a small alien figure. Her skin was a pale lavender, covered in intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to glow faintly. The alien's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises of deep indigo that locked onto Ilara's gaze. "Help, please," the alien whispered, her voice melodic despite the evident pain in her tone. Ilara didn't hesitate. She climbed into the ship, her medical training kicking in as she assessed the alien's condition. The creature was clearly injured, but what struck Ilara most was the alien's lower body. It seemed different, almost atrophied compared to the rest of her form. "I'm Dr. Ilara Chen," she said softly, trying to keep her voice calm and reassuring. "Can you tell me your name?" The alien's lips moved, forming unfamiliar sounds. "Zirina," she managed to say, wincing with the effort. Ilara nodded, her mind racing. She needed to get Zirina to safety, but she couldn't risk taking her to a regular hospital. The xenophobia that still plagued some humans, coupled with the potential interest from less than ethical research facilities, made that too dangerous. "Zirina, I'm going to help you," Ilara said firmly. "But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" The alien's indigo eyes studied Ilara's face for a long moment before she gave a small nod. With great care, Ilara helped Zirina out of the ship. The alien was lighter than she expected, her body seeming almost fragile in Ilara's arms. As they emerged from the craft, Ilara saw a crowd gathering in the distance. She knew they had to move quickly. "My lab isn't far," Ilara murmured to Zirina. "We'll be safe there." As they made their way through back alleys and less traveled paths, Ilara's mind whirled with questions. Who was Zirina? Where had she come from? And why did she seem so afraid? Little did Ilara know that this chance encounter would not only change her life, but potentially reshape the relationship between humans and aliens forever. As she cradled the injured Zirina, hurrying towards the sanctuary of her lab, Ilara felt a surge of protectiveness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was determined to help this mysterious alien visitor. The storm that had heralded Zirina's arrival continued to rumble overhead, as if nature itself recognized the momentous event that had just occurred. In the labs and corridors of power across New Geneva, alarms were already beginning to sound. An unregistered alien craft had entered Earth's atmosphere, and its occupant was now loose in the city. But for Ilara, all that mattered was the vulnerable being in her arms. As she punched in the access code to her private lab, she made a silent vow. She would unravel the mystery of Zirina, and in doing so, perhaps bridge the gap between their two species in ways no one had ever imagined possible. The lab door hissed shut behind them, sealing them away from the world outside. As Ilara gently laid Zirina on an examination table, their eyes met once again. In that moment, both human and alien felt the first stirrings of a connection that would come to challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and the universe. The adventure had only just begun. Overcoming barriers. As the days passed, Ilara's lab became a sanctuary for Zirina. The alien's physical recovery was slow but steady, thanks to Ilara's expertise in xenobiology. However, it was the emotional and cultural barriers that proved most challenging to overcome. Zirina's grasp of English improved rapidly, her alien mind seeming to absorb the language at an astonishing rate. With this newfound ability to communicate, she began to share her story with Ilara. On my world, Lysithea, those born different are seen as unworthy, Zirina explained one evening, her indigo eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and defiance. My legs never developed properly. In the eyes of my people, this makes me useless, a burden. Ilara felt a surge of anger at the injustice. That's horrible, she said, her voice tight with emotion. How could an advanced species think that way? Zirina's lips curved in a bitter smile. Our society values physical perfection above all else. Those who cannot contribute to the collective are discarded. The implications of that word hung heavy in the air between them. Ilara reached out, gently taking Zirina's hand in her own. The alien's skin was cool to the touch, with a texture like fine silk. Is that why you left? Ilara asked softly. Zirina nodded, her luminous patterns pulsing with what Ilara had come to recognize as distress. I was to be retired on my next birthday, but my brother, he couldn't bear the thought. He stole a ship, helped me escape. I don't know what happened to him after I left. Ilara felt her heart ache for Zirina and the brother who had risked everything to save her. She squeezed the alien's hand gently. You're safe here, she assured her, and we're going to prove your people wrong. Over the following weeks, Ilara threw herself into researching Lysithian physiology. She was determined to find a way to help Zirina regain mobility. The alien watched with a mixture of hope and skepticism as Ilara worked tirelessly, filling holoscreens with complex equations and biomechanical designs. Why are you doing this? Zirina asked one day, as Ilara pored over a particularly challenging problem. You barely know me. I'm not even of your species. Ilara looked up, her eyes bright with determination. Because it's the right thing to do, she said simply. And because I believe in you, Zirina. Your worth isn't determined by your physical capabilities. As she spoke, Ilara realized the truth in her words. In the short time they'd known each other, Zirina had shown incredible intelligence, resilience, and kindness. The thought of her being discarded was unthinkable. Their breakthrough came unexpectedly. Ilara had been experimenting with a combination of Earth technology and the remnants of Zirina's ship. As she activated the prototype exoskeleton, Zirina's eyes widened in wonder. I can feel it, she whispered, her patterns glowing brightly with excitement. It's like an extension of myself. Slowly, cautiously, Zirina took her first steps in years. Ilara watched, her heart swelling with pride and something else she couldn't quite name. As Zirina moved across the lab, her movements becoming more confident with each step, Ilara realized she was witnessing something truly extraordinary. But their moment of triumph was short-lived. An alert blared from Ilara's computer, causing both of them to freeze. On the screen, a news report showed grainy footage of Zirina's crash landing. The headline made Ilara's blood run cold. Alien fugitive at large. Authorities call for public vigilance. As they stared at the screen in shock, Ilara and Zirina realized their challenges were far from over. The outside world was closing in, and they would need all their combined ingenuity and courage to face what was coming. Ilara looked at Zirina, seeing the fear in her alien eyes. But beneath that fear was a steely determination that matched Ilara's own. Whatever came next, they would face it together. We're not giving up, Ilara said firmly, reaching for Zirina's hand. We've come too far. Zirina nodded, her grip tightening on Ilara's hand. In that moment, both of them felt the strength of their bond, a connection that transcended species and worlds. As the alert continued to blare, Ilara and Zerina stood side by side, ready to fight for their future and for a world where differences were celebrated, not feared. The real test of their resilience and the power of their unlikely friendship was about to begin. Inventing hope. The lab, once a sanctuary, now felt like a fortress under siege. Ilara worked feverishly, her fingers flying over holographic interfaces as she refined the exoskeleton design. Zerina, meanwhile, pushed herself to master the prototype, her determination growing with each passing day. We need to think beyond just mobility, Ilara mused one evening, rubbing her tired eyes. If we're going to change minds, we need to show that this technology can do more than just help you walk. Zerina tilted her head, her patterns shifting in what Ilara had come to recognize as deep thought. On Lysithea, our most revered are the Skywalkers, she said softly. They perform intricate aerial dances, defying gravity itself. A spark of inspiration lit up Ilara's eyes. That's it, she exclaimed, jumping to her feet. We'll make you fly. The next weeks were a blur of innovation and setbacks. Ilara's lab became a crucible of human ingenuity and alien insight. They combined cutting-edge Earth technology with salvaged components from Zerina's ship, creating something entirely new. As they worked, their bond deepened. Ilara found herself captivated by Zerina's resilience and quick wit. The alien, in turn, was constantly amazed by Ilara's compassion and brilliant mind. Neither spoke of the growing warmth between them, both focused on the monumental task at hand. Finally, after countless sleepless nights and near failures, they stood before their creation. The exoskeleton was a marvel of bioengineering, sleek and almost organic in appearance. It hummed with potential, waiting to come to life. "Are you ready?" Ilara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zerina nodded, her indigo eyes shining with a mixture of fear and excitement. As the exoskeleton enveloped her body, she gasped, feeling it sync with her nervous system. "Now," Ilara said, her finger hovering over the activation switch. "Fly." With a soft whoosh, Zerina rose into the air. Her initial movements were awkward, but as she adjusted to the sensation, grace began to flow through her. Soon, she was twirling and swooping through the lab, her body tracing intricate patterns in the air. Ilara watched in awe, her heart swelling with pride and something more. Something she was only now beginning to acknowledge. As Zerina landed gently before her, Ilara found herself reaching out, cupping the alien's face in her hands. "You're beautiful," she breathed, the words escaping before she could stop them. Zerina's patterns pulsed with a warm glow. "It's because of you," she replied softly. "You gave me wings when my own people would have let me fall." The moment was interrupted by an urgent beeping from Ilara's security system. They turned to the monitors, tensing as they saw a group of official-looking vehicles approaching the lab. "They found us," Ilara said, her mind racing. "We need to." But Zerina cut her off, a look of determination on her alien features. "No more hiding," she said firmly. "It's time to show them what we've created. Time to change minds." Ilara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She knew Zerina was right. They had created something revolutionary, something that could bridge the gap between species and challenge preconceptions about disability. As the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the building, Ilara and Zerina stood side by side. The exoskeleton hummed softly, ready to demonstrate its incredible capabilities. "Whatever happens," Ilara said, taking Zerina's hand, "we're in this together." Zerina squeezed back, her touch sending a thrill through Ilara. "Together," she agreed. The lab door burst open, revealing a mix of human authorities and what appeared to be Lysithian officials. But before anyone could speak, Zerina activated the exoskeleton. She rose into the air, her body moving with impossible grace as she began to dance. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the breathtaking display above them. As Zerina twirled and soared, her body painting stories in the air, Ilara saw the expressions of those watching change from suspicion to wonder. In that moment, as human and alien alike stood transfixed by Zerna's aerial ballet, Ilara knew they had done more than invent a new technology. They had created hope. Hope for a future where differences were celebrated, where barriers between species could be overcome. And as Zerna descended, her eyes locking with Ilara's, both knew that they had also discovered something else, a love that transcended worlds, a connection that would change everything. The real challenge was just beginning, but together they were ready to face whatever came next. Facing opposition. The aftermath of Zerna's breathtaking demonstration was a whirlwind of conflicting reactions. The human authorities, initially skeptical, were now buzzing with excitement about the potential applications of the exoskeleton technology. However, the Lysithian officials were less enthusiastic, their faces etched with a mixture of awe and barely concealed disdain. "This is an abomination," the lead Lysithian diplomat, Vextor, finally spoke. His voice was cold, cutting through the excited chatter. "You have corrupted our sacred traditions, defied the natural order." Ilara stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "We've created a way to overcome limitations, to celebrate diversity. How can that be wrong?" Vextor's eyes narrowed. "Our society has thrived for millennia by adhering to strict standards. This aberration," he gestured dismissively at Zerna, "threatens everything we've built." The room tensed, the excitement of moments ago replaced by a palpable tension. Zerna, still hovering slightly above the ground, spoke up. Her voice was steady, but Ilara could see the hurt in her eyes. "I am not an aberration, Vextor. I am Lysithian, just like you. This technology doesn't change who I am. It allows me to fully express myself." The human officials exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the alien conflict unfolding before them. One of them, a stern-looking woman Ilara recognized as Dr. Yara Valdez from the Global Science Council, cleared her throat. "While the cultural implications are complex," she said carefully, "the scientific achievement here is undeniable. Dr. Chen, we'd like to discuss the possibilities of further development and testing." Vextor's head snapped towards Dr. Valdez. "You cannot be serious. This technology could destabilize our entire society if it were to spread. Or it could revolutionize it," Ilara countered, her passion evident in every word. "Think of the possibilities, not just for those with physical limitations, but for space exploration, disaster relief, construction." As the debate raged on, Ilara noticed Zerna becoming increasingly agitated. The alien's patterns were pulsing rapidly, her movements in the air becoming less steady. Without hesitation, Ilara moved to her side, placing a comforting hand on her arm. "Are you okay?" she whispered. Zerna shook her head slightly. "It's too much," she murmured. "They're talking about us like we're not even here, like we're just experiments." Ilara felt a surge of protective anger. She turned back to the arguing group, her voice cutting through the din. "Enough." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her. "You're all missing the point. This isn't about politics or tradition or scientific advancement. It's about people. It's about giving everyone the chance to reach their full potential, regardless of where they come from or how they were born." She gestured to Zerna, who had landed beside her. "Look at what we've accomplished together. A human and a Lysithian, working in harmony to create something beautiful and revolutionary. Isn't that the future we should be striving for?" The room was quiet for a moment, the weight of Ilara's words sinking in. Then, to everyone's surprise, one of the younger Lysithian officials stepped forward. "She's right," he said, his voice trembling slightly. I have a daughter, born with a spinal defect. We've been hiding her, afraid of what would happen if anyone found out. But seeing this," he looked at Zerna with newfound hope. "Maybe there's another way." The admission seemed to shift the atmosphere in the room. Other officials, both human and Lysithian, began to speak up, sharing stories of loved ones who could benefit from such technology. Vextor, however, remained unmoved. "This changes nothing," he declared. "The Council will never accept this. And you," he pointed at Zirna, "will be brought back to face judgment for your desertion." Before anyone could react, Zirna activated her exoskeleton, rising into the air. Her voice, when she spoke, was filled with a quiet strength that made everyone in the room take notice. "I will go back," she said, shocking Ilara, "but not as a prisoner. I'll go back to show our people what's possible when we embrace our differences instead of fearing them." Ilara felt her heart race. "Zirna, no, it's too dangerous." But Zirna just smiled, reaching down to take Ilara's hand. "Not if you come with me," she said softly. "Together, we can show both our worlds what's possible." As Ilara looked up into Zirna's eyes, she knew her decision was already made. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. The room erupted into chaos as everyone tried to voice their opinions on this unexpected turn of events. But for Ilara and Zirna, the noise faded away. In that moment, they were in their own world, united by a love and a purpose that transcended the boundaries of their species. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they were ready. Together, they would challenge the status quo, fight for acceptance, and perhaps, just perhaps, change the course of two civilizations. As they stood hand in hand, Ilara and Zirna knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning. A new future. The journey to Lysithea was tense, filled with anticipation and fear of the unknown. Ilara marveled at the alien ship's technology, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her anxiety. Beside her, Zirna sat in quiet contemplation, her patterns shifting in complex waves that Ilara had come to recognize as deep emotional turmoil. As they approached the alien world, Ilara gasped. Lysithea was a planet of breathtaking beauty. Towering crystal spires reached into the clouds, while vast networks of suspended pathways connected floating cities. It was a world that seemed to defy gravity itself. "It's beautiful," Ilara breathed. Zirna nodded, a hint of sadness in her voice. "Yes, but beauty can hide many flaws." Their arrival caused an immediate stir. News of the defective Lysithean returning with alien technology spread like wildfire. As they disembarked, they were met by a delegation of stern-faced officials, led by the imposing figure of the High Counselor. "Zirna, child of the disgraced house of Nyx," the High Counselor's voice boomed. "You dare return to soil you were deemed unfit to walk upon." Zirna stepped forward, her head held high. With a thought, she activated the exoskeleton, rising gracefully into the air. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I return not as the child you cast aside," Zirna declared, her voice carrying across the landing platform, "but as living proof that our perceptions of worth and ability are flawed." Over the next few days, Ilara and Zirna faced a grueling series of inquiries, demonstrations, and debates. They showcased the exoskeleton's capabilities, explained the science behind it, and argued passionately for a more inclusive society. Resistance was fierce. Many Lysithians saw the technology as a threat to their way of life. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, minds began to change. It started with the younger generation. Inspired by Zirna's story and Ilara's unwavering support, they began to question the rigid standards their society had always upheld. Underground movements sprang up, advocating for the rights of the imperfect. The turning point came during a public forum. As Ilara and Zirna fielded hostile questions, a young Lysithian mother pushed her way to the front, cradling a child with visibly malformed limbs. "My daughter," she said, her voice shaking, "was born like this. I was told to discard her, but I couldn't. I've been hiding her, loving her in secret. Please, can you help her?" The room fell silent. Zirna descended, gently taking the child in her arms. With Ilara's help, they fitted a miniature version of the exoskeleton to the girl's limbs. As the child took her first steps, then began to hover, the audience watched in awe. The child's laughter, pure and joyous, seemed to break something in the collective Lysithian psyche. Even the most hardened traditionalists found it difficult to argue against the happiness and potential they were witnessing. Change didn't come overnight, but it came. Over the following months, Ilara and Zirina worked tirelessly, refining the technology and adapting it for various needs. They established a joint human Lysithian research facility dedicated to pushing the boundaries of what was possible. As their work gained recognition, other alien species took notice. Delegations arrived from across the galaxy, eager to learn and share their own knowledge. Lysithia, once isolated in its pursuit of perfection, began to open up to the wider universe. One evening, as they watched the twin moons of Lysithia rise from the balcony of their new home, Ilara turned to Zirina. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" she asked, entwining her fingers with Zirina's. Zirina smiled, her patterns glowing with contentment. "Never. But then again, I never imagined I'd fall in love with a brilliant human scientist either." As they leaned in to share a kiss, Ilara marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter on Earth to changing the course of an entire civilization, their story was proof that love, compassion, and determination could overcome any barrier. In the cities below, lights twinkled as Lysithians of all abilities went about their lives. Children who would once have been hidden away now played openly in parks specially designed for their needs. The skyways were filled with people using variations of Ilara and Zirina's technology, some for necessity, others simply for the joy of flight. Their work was far from over. There were still minds to change, challenges to overcome. But as Ilara and Zirina stood together, silhouetted against the alien sky, they knew that they had already achieved something remarkable. They had created a future where differences were celebrated, where love knew no boundaries, and where the only limit was the reach of one's dreams. As the night deepened, Ilara and Zirina held each other close, two beings from different worlds united by a love that had changed everything. And in the vast, star-filled sky above Lysithia, new possibilities beckoned, promising adventures yet to come.